Hello and welcome to your e-learning video for today. I hope you're doing well. In this video today, we're going to look at combining together a couple of things that we've been working on this last couple of weeks. So nothing really new today, just combining a couple of skills together. And so this first question should look familiar to you. It's one that we've looked at before. You've got an equation written in this form that we now know is called point-slope form, and we want to graph that equation. And so remember, what you want to do is you want to rearrange it so that it looks like the form that we graph in, which is called slope-intercept form, which looks like this. The y is by itself. And so what you want to do to get this point-slope form equation written into slope-intercept equation is you want to start, like we always start when we're solving an equation, by getting rid of parentheses. And so you would take the 4 and you'd multiply it by the x and you'd multiply it by the 1, and you'd have y minus 3 is equal to 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. All right, so now what would your next and final step be to get this in slope-intercept form? Well, you're going to move this minus 3, so you're going to add 3. And remember, you can't add it to the 4x, but you can combine it together with this minus 4. And so your equation would be y is equal to 4x. And then since negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1, minus 1. So the equation that we just found is y is equal to 4x minus 1. What would the slope of that equation be? Okay, the slope would be 4. That's the number in front of the x. And then the y-intercept would be what? It would be negative 1, or 0, negative 1. So if you remember, when you go to graph this line, you start at the y-intercept. You start at that point 0, negative 1. And then you use the slope, which is, you can also think of it as 4 over 1, to get to the next point. So from that point you just graphed, rise over run would be 4 over 1. So you rise 4 and you run 1, and that gets you to the next dot. And then you can just connect those two dots together with a straight line, and that's what your equation would look like. That's what the solution to that equation would look like. So this is where we first started taking this form that was called point-slope form and rearranging it into slope-intercept form. So that's going to be one of the skills that you're using in your assignment today. Okay, the other skill that you're going to be using in your assignment today, which we've been working on the last couple of weeks, is to take a point and a slope and to write the equation of it. Now, when we were first doing that, we were doing it this way. No, let me go back to that screen first. We were doing it this way. I was giving you a point and I was telling you a slope, and you would graph it. You would find the point negative 4, 2, and then you would graph a slope of 1/2. So you'd rise up, run 2, you'd draw that line in, and from that line, you would figure out the slope and the y-intercept. But we have been working with doing it without a graph using this thing called point-slope form. And so remember, in point-slope form, you're going to fill in 3 blanks. You're going to fill in the x1 and y1 with the ordered pair, and you're going to fill in the m with the slope. And so if we have the same information we had before when we looked at the graph and wrote the equation, we can go ahead and just automatically write the equation down. And so the y at the beginning of this is always there, and this parenthesis x is always there, and this equal sign is always there. And actually, this parenthesis is always here. We're filling in those 3 blanks. So if you want to, you can just go ahead and write down a y and then leave a little space. Write down the equal sign, leave a little space, put parentheses x, leave a little space, and put another parenthesis. Now we're just going to fill this information in. So remember, negative 4, 2, that's negative 4 is the x and 2 is the y. So we're going to put the negative 4 next to the x. The trick is you write down the opposite number because it says minus x1. So you're minusing a negative 4, which means you put down plus 4. Okay, the 2 goes next to the y, but again, you write down the opposite. You write down minus 2 because it says minus y1. The m, that's the slope, that's what goes in front of the parentheses. You don't change the sign on that because there's no minus sign in front of this m, so you just put a 1/2 right here. And so that's our equation in point-slope form. So that's the other thing we've worked on here the last week or so. And so what we want to do is we want to take both of those things that we just looked at, okay, writing the equation in point-slope form, rearranging it into slope-intercept form, and that's what you're going to be doing today. So the first kind of example of a problem that you're going to be working on looks like this one here. And so let me get the thing out of the way. Okay, we're going to start by writing the equation in point-slope form. So again, this should look familiar. You'd had a couple of problems like this on your assignment before. And so just like we just talked about, the 16 is the x and the 4 is the y. So next to the x, you're going to put a 16. Next to the y, you're going to fill in a 4. And then remember, on these drop-down boxes, you put down the opposite, whatever the sign is. So the 16 was positive, so you're going to pick a negative. The 4 was positive, so you're going to pick a negative. And then the slope, the negative 8/5, that goes out in front here. All right, now it's just a matter of rearranging this into slope-intercept form. And so I'm going to rewrite this so that it's a little bit easier to look at. Y minus 4 is equal to negative 8/5, and then in parentheses, x minus 16. And so just like before, we're going to get rid of those parentheses and we're going to move things around to get that equation in slope-intercept form. I just realized this one doesn't come out even, so there's a little bit of a problem here. All the ones you have today, whenever you multiply, you're going to get whole numbers. You're not going to have to worry about having fractions. Now, the slope may be a fraction, but when you take the slope times a number, you'll get a whole number. So instead of doing this one, I'm going to change this problem just a little bit. Instead of making this negative 8/5, how about if I just make this negative 1/2? And then let's do this problem. Okay, so if I was going to put this in slope-intercept form, first thing we would do is distribute. Okay, so go ahead and take negative 1/2 times x and negative 1/2 times negative 16. And so if we do, it's going to be y minus 4 is equal to what over on this side? So negative 1/2 times x is negative 1/2 x. Negative 1/2 times negative 16 is positive 8. Okay, so when you do your next and final step, what would your final answer be here? Okay, we're going to add 4. And so when you do, you're going to get y is equal to negative 1/2 x. 8 plus 4 is plus 12. And so that would be the equation in slope-intercept form. And so we're going to write the equation in point-slope form and then rearrange it into slope-intercept form on your assignment today. So that's what you're going to be working on. Okay, so let's try one more example here. So what I want you to do is, first of all, write down the equation that it would be in point-slope form. All right, so what you should have written down is y minus 1 equals negative 1 times x minus 2. Remember, the 2 goes next to the x because it's the x. The 1 goes next to the y because it's the y. But you write down the opposite sign. So that's why we put down minus 2 and minus 1, because it says minus x1 and minus y1. Okay, then the slope, the negative 1, that's what goes in front of the parentheses. Okay, now take a few seconds here and rearrange that equation and write down what it would be in slope-intercept form. Okay, so you should have done the distributive property, and when you did, you get y minus 1 is equal to negative 1x plus 2. And then you're going to add this minus 1, and you're going to end up with y is equal to negative 1x plus 3. All right, so that is what you are working on in your assignment today. You are going to take a point and a slope. You're going to rewrite it in point-slope form, and then rearrange it into slope-intercept form. So hopefully you get along with that without any problems. But if you do have any problems or any questions, make sure you contact me. But hopefully you won't. And so that's all I have for you today. Good luck.